It's really a privilege to be here. We're going to be talking about the energy healing experiments, which is a book that appeared last year. This is a work that represents about 10 or 11 years of collaborative work that was done mostly at the University of Arizona. I'm going to start with some stories just to make sure that we're all on the same page about what we mean by energy and energy healing. And then I'm going to go to science, both theory, informal science, and then actual laboratory experiments. And then we're going to consider some of the implications of all of this, these truths. I've already asked you the question, who's experienced energy healing? I guess many of you have. Have any of you experienced really remarkable healings, either in yourself or others, when you've done this work? Just a few of you? Okay. Let me give you an example of my first introduction to this, because you have to understand I was not anticipating doing this kind of work. Very quickly. It's the mid-1990s. I'm in the East Coast visiting with a psychotherapist. I call her Suzanne in the book. And Suzanne was learning something called healing touch. How many of you heard about healing touch? Okay. And of course, I had not heard about healing touch at that time. And she receives a phone call from one of her patients, a psychotherapy patient, a woman lawyer, all upset. Her husband had fallen off the roof, maybe broken his back, maybe broken his wrist. He was in the ER. She was very upset, and she asked whether Suzanne would come to the hospital. Suzanne said yes, and Suzanne invited me because I was trained in clinical psychology. So I tagged along. Okay? And we get to the hospital, and there is this gentleman, and he is lying in a room by himself. He hasn't had any medication yet. He hasn't had any x-rays. He's in severe pain. Suzanne says to me, she said, Gary, she said, would you take his wife outside the room and sort of talk with her? I'm going to try doing a little energy work. I said, sure. So I gently moved his wife out of the room. But what I did was I arranged her in such a way so I could look over her shoulder to see what she was doing with this gentleman. Okay? So if you don't mind, you're going to be our fake gentleman. You can keep your eyes open and so on, and I won't touch you physically. Okay? The first thing I noticed her doing is she's taking her hands and she's sort of moving her hands over his body, like so, wiping the air. I didn't know what she was doing. I later learned that this is called body scanning. By the way, I've gone through healing touch on myself now. Then I noticed her moving over to his wrist, and she started doing things like this. She started wiping the energy. Okay? I had no idea. I later learned this is called energy unruffling, for those of you who may know about this. Then she took her index finger with her hand, and she started going like this, drilling holes in the air. When I saw this, I thought this. After about 15 minutes, she invites us in. And there's this man smiling like a Cheshire cat, claiming that his pain is virtually gone. Now, he was not about to play tennis. Turns out he had broken his wrist, and he had severely injured his back. But his pain was virtually gone. And the question was, what happened to his pain? Was this just a spontaneous occurrence? Would have happened anyway? Was this some sort of massive placebo effect, some fantastic suggestion, power of his mind over his body? Or was there something that she was doing with her consciousness, her intentions, and her energy that was actually affecting his pain? In other words, is energy healing, quote, real, and does it involve energy? That's the question that a scientist is going to be asking. And that's, for me, where it all began. Now, if we're going to talk about energy, it helps to review what one of the greatest scientists of all time said about energy. And this is a quote from Einstein. And I want to read it to you and review it so that we're all on the same page here, okay? Einstein said, "We may therefore regard matter as being constituted by the regions of space in which the energy or field is extremely intense. There is no place in this new kind of physics both for the field and matter. For the field is the only reality." Well, I don't know about you, but when I feel this table, this feels real. right? That's what our common experience is. So what's he talking about? Well, the history of science has taught us, or should have taught us, we tend to forget this, some very deep lessons, which is that the way things typically appear to our everyday senses is not necessarily the way things really are. For example, we look out, whether it's in Tucson or Virginia or New York or London or Tokyo, it doesn't matter. We look out over the earth and it looks flat. It looks flat to everybody. That's our common experience. That's what people believed. But what did we end up discovering? Is the earth flat? No. It's a sphere. And knowing that it's a sphere has improved our capacity, of course, to navigate and understand things greatly. Or, in the Tucson, by the way, we get this a lot. We have over 300 days of sunshine. You look out at the sky, you wake up in the morning, and you see this sort of yellow ball appears over a mountain. And over the course of the day, it's at different positions in the sky, and then it disappears at the other end of the mountains. What's our experience? That the sun revolves around us. That's our conscious experience. That's the way it looks. But is that the way it really is? No, we had it backwards. It's actually us that's revolving around the sun. Well, objects are obviously solid. But what does quantum physics tell us about the percentage of a table or our bodies that's actually empty space? Anybody know? Yeah, 99.999999. And for those of you who have not thought about this before, if you imagine, for example, a hydrogen atom to be the size of the Empire State Building, and you imagine how big is the nucleus, where most of the, quote, mass is. Is it 10 stories high? Is it 1 story high? Is it 1 foot high? It's about the size of a grain of sand. It's just nothing. So I want you to hold on to the idea that our experience in our normal consciousness of the way things are is not necessarily the way they really are. And that idea, which is not difficult for you, but it's difficult for a lot of people to right now understand, provides the foundation or the justification in physics for taking this kind of approach. Now, I've had the privilege to work with a large group of interdisciplinary scholars in the process of doing this work, and that include biostatistics, physiology, psychiatry, neuroscience, psychology, cardiology, nursing, optical sciences, music, surgery, medical anthropology, biophysics. Why so many different specialties? If Einstein is correct, that the field is the only reality, then no one specialty owns energy. Energy applies to everything. And therefore, it's ultimately going to be studied and be part of all aspects of healthcare.